the words of the prophecy, and blessed are those who hear and who keep what is written in it, for the time is near. John to the 7 churches that are in Asia, grace to you and peace from him who is and who was and who is to come, and from the 7 spirits who are before his throne. We will conclude our reading at this point. The book of the Revelation to John, chapter 1, verse 4. You've been listening to a serialized reading of the Bible, the New Revised Standard Version, presented every morning at 8:15 on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Your reader has been Rosemary. Thank you for listening.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Margaret Mack, and for the next half hour, I'll be reading from the January 22nd issue of the Challenger Community News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And the front page article on the Challenger, Mayor Ryan names Dr. Eva M. Doyle Buffalo's first Martin Luther King Jr. Citizen of the Year. Mayor Sean M. Ryan announced last week that he had selected Dr. Eva M. Ryan as the City of Buffalo's first ever Martin Luther King Jr. Citizen of the Year, a new annual honor established by the Ryan administration to mark Dr. King's birthday and recognize a Buffalonian whose life's work reflects Dr. King's enduring values of service, education, justice, and community leadership. As part of the recognition, Mayor Ryan also proclaimed January 16, 2026 as Dr. Eva M. Doyle Day in the city of Buffalo. Dr. Doyle has spent her life educating, uplifting, and challenging our community to better understand both our history and our responsibility to one another. Mayor Ryan said, "Her work reflects the very best of Dr. King's legacy, a belief that education is power, that truth matters, and that lasting change is built through service to others." Dr. Doyle has spent more than 3 decades using education as a tool for empowerment in Buffalo and across Western New York. She holds a master's degree in elementary education and an honorary doctorate of human letters from Buffalo State University, and has taught generations of Buffalo Public School students while lecturing widely on African American history for schools, civic organizations, faith organizations, and community groups. Her educational mission extends beyond the classroom. Dr. Doyle, a prolific writer and columnist, is the creator of Eye on History, the longest-running column on African American history in the region, first published 47 years ago, and currently a regular feature in the Criterion. Dr. Doyle's writing on Black history has also been featured in the Buffalo News and several national outlets. She hosted the Eye on History radio program on WUFO 1080 AM and 96.5 FM for 14 years. Following the May 14, 2022 Tops Massacre, Dr. Doyle emerged as a trusted voice on local and national media and helped organize the citywide Porch Light tribute on the first anniversary of the attack. She has also created more than 100 essay contests for Buffalo youth and adults, founded community awards, and established the Romeo Doyle Mohammed Scholarship in memory of her late husband, a Korean War veteran. A published author, her 12th and most recent book is titled Eye on History, The Golden Collection, articles on African and African American history, lost history, forgotten history. Dr. Doyle's contribution have earned her more than 100 honors. Her portrait on Buffalo's Freedom Wall and ongoing recognition for a lifetime dedicated to education, truth, and service. The Martin Luther King Jr. Citizen of the Year honor will be awarded annually to a Buffalonian whose life work embodies Dr. King's commitment to justice, education, service, and the pursuit of a more equitable community. And next we have some area briefs. The Juneteenth Committee was on hand Sunday at Kleinhans during the Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration to promote the upcoming Buffalo Juneteenth Gala scheduled for June 5th at Classics 5 Banquet Hall. Representatives were also on hand to provide information about the festival's 50th annual celebration this year at MLK Park. And the next item, free job fair. In partnership with the New York State Department of Labor, the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library is offering an in-person job fair at Central Library on Friday, January 30th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Bring your resume. Nearly 70 companies are expected to attend the event. The event will take place throughout the library. And next item, Brown appointed chair of New York Gaming Association. Former Mayor Byron Brown, the president and CEO of Western Regional Off-Track Betting, has been named board chair of the New York Gaming Association. He is the first Western OTB president and CEO to serve as Gaming Association chair. The one-year term is not a paid position. The trade group represents facilities from Long Island to Western New York. And finally, under area briefs, Buffalo Street Trees. Want a tree in front of your home? Buffalo Street Trees, BST, is a City of Buffalo initiative to inform and engage residents of the opportunities and benefits of bringing trees to their neighborhoods. The City of Buffalo is working with community members to bring trees to the neighborhoods that need them the most. Request your tree today. Buffalo Street Trees is also looking for tree ambassadors. Help spread the word about street trees. Apply by February 6th. Visit our website at www.buffalotrees.org. According to Investigative Post, the lack of shade trees on Buffalo's east side is a significant, well-documented issue characterized by a severe tree canopy disparity compared to other parts of the city. This deficit is most pronounced in predominantly black and low-income neighborhoods, such as the Maston and Fillmore districts, leading to higher dangerous heat levels and poor air quality. And also on the front page is a note about a speech by Congressman Jim Clyburn at the MLK Festival. I came here to remind you we've been like this before. United States Congressman Jim Clyburn delivered an historically based reality check during his speech at the annual MLK Awards celebration on Sunday. In a call to action, he challenged us to break our silence, use our vote, and do what's necessary to put this nation back on track. South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn delivered an historically based reality check and call to action at Kleinhans Music Hall on Sunday during the 2026 annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. Our country seems to be at war with itself, the celebrated lawmaker said. A lot of you watching the news have been saying to yourself, when has it ever been like this before? Representative Clyburn proceeded to make it a plain as he cited examples of this nation's divisive past from the Revolutionary War, when this country was trying to give birth to itself, to the Civil Rights Movement led by Dr. King, to the current Trump reign that's pitting Americans against one another as it proceeds to trash the Constitution, vilify minorities, erase and or whitewash Black history, get rid of the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and trample on our constitutional rights. We are an equally divided country today, said Clyburn, but we've been here before. We survived before and will survive these times. He recalled his first meeting with Dr. Martin Luther King during the Civil Rights Movement when he was a 19-year-old college student. The meeting took place on the campus of the Morehouse College in Atlanta, where students from all over the country gathered for the meeting of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. There were some differences, he recalled. We youngsters thought we had the answers and did not necessarily agree with the oldsters, and we asked Dr. King for a meeting. 6 hours later, he said, I came out of that room with a Saul to Paul transformation. It was also there that he met the late Congressman John Lewis and learned how to practice nonviolence. He said most importantly, he came to understand that there were some things bigger than me at work at that time, and, like I did that night, I'm asking you all tonight to set aside whatever it is that may be personally of interest and work together for the good of the whole. He compared the controversial 1876 presidential election between Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel J. Tilden, considered the most divisive in U.S. history, with the 2020 Trump-Biden election. Hayes needed 20 electoral votes to win that tight race. He bribed a special committee appointed to resolve the issue, promising that he would end Reconstruction efforts to address slavery's wrongs if they delivered him the winning votes. They did, and 1 month later, he withdrew all the troops from the South, and Jim Crow, a brutal racial hierarchy in the South, and effectively disenfranchised Black citizens, became the law of the land. Fact of the matter is, this was the last time this country was evenly divided, like it is today. By a vote of 8-7, Reconstruction, efforts to address slavery's wrongs, came to an end, and then by a vote of 184 to 185, Jim Crow became the law. I used to teach history and tell my students, anything that happened before can happen again, continued Congressman Clyburn. So, the question for us tonight, how will this all end? Back in 1876, he pointed out, they wore red shirts. Today, they wear red caps. Back in 1876, they had confrontations between the National Guard and the citizens. Does that sound familiar to you today? We've been here before, and we know how it ended before. We must not allow it to end that way this time. Dr. King said, I've come to the conclusion that the people of ill will in our society are making much better use of time than the people of goodwill. Good people, we must break our silence. Use your vote. We cannot say we want this country's greatness to be available and affordable to us unless we participate and do what it takes to make it available and affordable. He concluded, so I come to you to say, activate, Do the things that are necessary to help put this country back on track, not just for you, but for your children, for your grandchildren. Because if we don't, the future will look like the past, lived by our parents and grandparents. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Challenger Community News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And next article is by Victoria Ross, Western New York Peace Center Report. Standing up for each other. Stop government-sponsored violence. As you likely know, ICE Border Patrol and Homeland Security have been very active in our neighborhoods, knocking our friends to the ground and dragging them off to Batavia Federal Detention Center. Black, Indigenous, and people of color are very familiar with the racism and molten lawlessness with which these detentions, arrests, abductions, and raids have been occurring. Having followed the law, or having made an extremely minor legal violation, a traffic stop can result in state-permitted murder. It's outrageous that the Supreme Court has recently ruled that people can be stopped and detained based on their appearance and/or language alone. The lack of probable cause violates the principle of legal protection under the law. Black people know all about it, having been on the receiving end all these years. Racism fueling state agents armed with weapons and impunity sound familiar? Indeed, it echoes the origin of our police departments. Add to that quotas for how many people to detain. Between the money being made, quotas to be filled, and loosening of protections, people are even detained leaving court. Action steps toward preventing these atrocities include: go to New York Immigration Coalition, NYIC.org, to sign their NY for All Protection, which will also facilitate contracting your state representatives. You can thank State Senator April Baskin for her support of S987 and urge your assembly person to support, co-sponsor, and or at least vote for NY4A11. Report potential ICE and other migrant-targeted activity right away to Buffalo Immigrant and Refugee Defense at 716-222-2190. It helps to report salute, size, how many officers, activity, what they were doing, location, where were they, and where were you, uniforms, what kind of uniforms, clothing, insignia, logos, initials were they wearing, time and date, equipment, weapons, arms, vehicles, etc. Another thing you can do, action step, join BIRD, B-I-R-D. Watch Rapid Response Network, BRRN, at www.brrn.info, and or Justice for Migrant Families with volunteer categories, Batavia phone line, accompanying targeted people, Court Watch, Pen Pal. These groups are developing defensive responses and proactive strategies. Join the hashtag Stop Government Sponsored Violence campaign. As Reverend Dr. King said, the bombs going off over there are exploding over here. We need those resources and to stop the cycle of violence which hurts everyone. Join Western New York Peace.org. Help us support these groups and efforts, building a movement to care for people and planet. We're all in this together. For more information, read the investigative post where J. Dale Schumacher is doing a superb job reporting on this topic. And next, in political news, Senator April Baskin named chair of the Senate Commerce, Economic Development, and Small Business Committee. New York State Senator April Baskin announced today that she has accepted an appointment to serve as chair of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Economic Development, and Small Businesses, a key post that aims to focus on strengthening local economies and supporting small businesses statewide. I am grateful to Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins for entrusting me to lead this prominent committee at the beginning of my tenure as a state senator, stated Senator Baskin. I want to assure residents of New York State, as well as my colleagues in the Senate, that I will remain focused, assertive, and attentive to all economic development and small business reform and practices across our great state. Senator Baskin brings extensive economic development experience to the role. Prior to joining the New York State Senate, she served 6 years as chair of the Erie County Legislature, where she played a leading role in major initiatives including the creation of Renaissance Commerce Park in Lackawanna and securing Erie County's first ever NFL community benefits agreement with the Buffalo Bills. She also served for 6 years on the Erie County Industrial Development Agency, where she supported the effort to create an economic inclusion tax credit that provided an enhanced incentive for projects and companies that created MWBE and small business contracting opportunities. While serving in the county legislature, Senator Baskin passed small business-focused legislation, such as the MWBE Modernization Bill, that increased opportunities for such businesses in Erie County. She also launched a pilot program connecting marginalized business owners to corporate contracting opportunities, generating a total of $1 million in revenue for participating businesses. Senator Baskin currently has a package of bills aimed at expanding public and private contracting opportunities for small businesses across New York State. Throughout Senator Baskin's tenure on this committee, she has demonstrated a steadfast commitment to economic development and helping small businesses thrive across New York, Stewart Cousins said. I look forward to having her leadership in this new role. Senator Baskin will also continue serving as chair of the Senate's Procurement and Contracts Committee. This next article is an excerpt from an article by Oswald Walker, Top 7 Most Sanctified Moments in Black Church History. It's entitled Hush Harbors, one of the most significant and game-changing moments in Black church history. During the enslavement of our people, originally, there was a big debate about whether or not to let Black folk in the church. Those who voted to keep us out did so for several reasons. One, some of them believed that we had no souls because to them we were barely human, if at all. Others figured that baptizing Black folk would, by the teachings of the faith, make all involved one with Christ and equal in the eyes of the Lord. And that couldn't stand, because equality would destroy their cash flow, which was built on the back of human trafficking and stolen labor, lives, and wealth. Others reasoned that the enslaved would then have to learn how to read if brought into the church. However, Massa's entire system required keeping the enslaved as ignorant as possible. Still others feared enslaved blacks would find inspiration in the scriptures to fight for their freedom, as nearly the entire Old Testament is the same story over and over. The oppressed crying out to God for help, and God helping the oppressed fight for and eventually winning their freedom. You see how that could be problematic for folks making all this money off slavery, right? It wasn't until the Haitian Revolution that started in the late 1790s and ended around 1804 that white folk en masse were ready to open wide the church doors. Why? Those who owned our ancestors feared that the success of our cousins in Haiti in taking their freedom by violent force would inspire black folk in the U.S. to do the same. And these, in quote, owners could best control their enslaved by bringing them into the church and teaching them a brand of Christianity that taught, number one, obedience to Massa was the same as obedience to God. 2, God had ordained black folk to be enslaved. And 3, only the obedient enslaved person would get their heavenly reward at death. So, black folk were let in the door of the church, where we sat in segregated sections and heard a gazillion sermons that all basically said the same thing. Slave, be obedient to your master. But, unknown to the truly ignorant folk on the plantation, the so-called owners, African people were the first to recognize there was a power greater than themselves. The first to devise the spiritual technology we call prayer, and the first to create spiritual system we call religions. African people had been relating to, calling on, and relying upon this invisible creator of all things for thousands of years before Europe was even a thing. So, as our enslaved ancestors sat in those plantations, enslaved labor camp churches, being preached down to, something inside them so strong demanded that they worship in the way of their ancestors. So, risking their lives and well-being, these enslaved sisters and brothers began sneaking away on Sunday afternoons and evenings to go out to the forest and swamps and hold worship service of their own. Some historians call them the hush harbors. Others label them as the invisible institution. Whatever name you roll with, these ongoing shows of spiritual defiance were bold acts of agency by our foremothers and forefathers. These acts reflected the fact that even though we heard constant messages meant to blind us to our inherent worth and connection to God during these Massa-led services, we fought to reject that nonsense and to nurture our own relationship with the great I Am. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the January 22nd issue of the Challenger Community News. We read from the Challenger Community News every Saturday at 8:30 a.m. Your reader has been Margaret Mack. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of the Batavia Daily News. Following that at 10 o'clock is the East Aurora Advertiser, and at 11 we have the Niagara Gazette. Stay with us for these readings and more throughout the day. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings of printed matter to our listeners who are blind or have a print disability throughout Western New York and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service has brought nearly 40 years and more than 300,000 hours of radio readings to those without sight. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Bruce, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Thursday, January 29th, 2026 issue of the Batavia Daily News, serving Genesee, Wyoming, and Orleans counties on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. One of the top stories, Tenney speaks on Minneapolis. Congresswoman says protests may be AstroTurf. Tenney speaks in support of law enforcement, calls Saturday's fatal shooting tragic. Article by Brian Quinn. While calling the death of